It's my great pleasure to moderate today's webinar from the Daylight Academy from the Daylight Awareness Week. I think this is day 3. Very warm welcome to all participants of this webinar. So I don't see your faces or your screens right now, but I know that there are many of you. I also welcome our today's speakers. So we have 3 excellent speakers, experts in the field. So I will introduce them a little bit later. And of course, I will also welcome the team of the Daylight Academy who did a lot of work in the background, who enabled this webinar, and hopefully it will go smoothly. Just to say a few words on housekeeping things, so you can share, you can use the Q&A. I will show you this a little bit later. The Q&A, yes, here. The questions you can write down in this little field, and we will answer it at the end of the presentation or during the discussion. And also to say a few words to the Daylight Academy. So the Daylight Academy is an international membership organization. It exists since 2017. It's connecting all research or many research areas, but also artists and architects and other professionals with a strong interest in daylight-related topics. So it's encouraging creativity and innovation. And the work is mainly interdisciplinary, and that's very important. So there is also a great disseminating of knowledge among specialists and the public. As we perceive now, the days become shorter. A lot of interest is growing in daylight, because then, of course, daylight affects us all, but also the youngest among us. And so today's topic is daylight through children's eyes. So we have 3 speakers today, as I said before. I will start with the first speaker, and then the second and the third. After each speaker, there will be a time for a really short questions, a burning question. So, and the speaker will answer it. And then at the end, there will be a discussion round where also you can give input, and I will ask also speakers. So there will be that will follow the 3 input presentations. So we'll start with the first speaker, who is Anna Biller. Anna Biller is a postdoc. She's working at the Technical University in Munich. She will talk about circadian rhythms and other health effects of light. So she will introduce the topic. She recently edited a comic book for children about the science of daylight. And that is something really interesting. She will also give you some information about this new book and also give the link. You may already have heard about it, but you will see that it's really a great thing to have. So please, Anna, could you start sharing the screen?
Sure. Thank you so much, Miriam, for the kind introduction. As Miriam said, my name is Anna Biller, and I guess I start with a little bit of introduction into the topic. So we know that you are mostly experts, I guess, but there might be some participants as well who have not heard about the effects of light or daylight. So let me just quickly give you some introduction. And so I'm from my background, I'm a chronobiologist and sleep researcher, and so I'm interested in what does light actually do for healthy sleep and our circadian rhythms. And so circadian rhythms are basically rhythms that are generated in our body. So it's the endogenous body clock that synchronizes with the outside world. And this is the crucial point here, because actually in order to synchronize with the outside world, with the external light-dark cycle, we need the light. So light is a very potent and a central cue for our biological clock. And it basically tells us when to do certain things, for example, when to fall asleep, sleep timing, and so on. And so you can maybe imagine that wrong light at the wrong time really is confusing for the body. You experience that when you go and travel overseas, so you experience jet lag, or when you work shift work, for example, and that can lead to desynchronization. And basically this can have acute effects, but also long-term health consequences, which are very bad. So this can lead to or increased risk for diabetes, but also certain cancer types, depression risk increases, and so on. So it's not a very healthy thing to do, to confuse your body so much when you experience wrong time cues. And so you can also imagine that your photic history and light diet really matters. So I just put some hashtags here, meaning like keywords like artificial lighting at the wrong time, or also displays emitting blue light or very bright light in the evening or dark hours can basically confuse the body. So the goal really is to experience very bright days and very dark nights, just as we had that before we basically introduced electric lighting. And so just very, very briefly, this is mediated by a specific type of receptor in the retina. And you know the rods and cones, but there's been actually some cells, the iPRGC cells, that are also very, very relevant for this. So this is just so you've heard of this before. And you know that the rods and cones are primarily important for the canonical visual pathway, which is up here, but the iPRGCs were basically explored or found about 20 years ago, and they're more involved in this non-image forming pathway, as we call it. So everything that controls your body clock. Okay, so we know that light influences sleep, so it can advance the sleep, can also affect the duration of your sleep, or can also improve sleep quality if it's the right light at the right time, obviously. It can also have acute effects. For example, you might get more alert or sleepy if it's very dim. You can affect your concentration, your mood, and I think everyone knows this. You can also influence your vitamin D production. And light can also have a seasonal affective disorder. Maybe also something that you've heard of before. It can elevate winter depression as it's used as a light therapy. Okay. Now, since we're talking about children, I just want to mention that there is a special case for children and teenagers because they undergo a development, especially during puberty, that is really widespread in the whole body, and it poses special challenges. So in order to account for these challenges, children and adolescents need a lot of light to prevent myopia, for example, and we have an expert on this talking about this later, but also, for example, to prevent them to becoming even later chronotypes. And a chronotype is basically whether you're more of an early or late type, for example, in your sleep timing. And this is important because we see that children seem to have some altered sensitivity, especially to evening light. So they're very prone to, when they are exposed to evening light, that this could be particularly disruptive for them. And also we see, if you compare very young children to very old, older adults, for example, that they're around 10 times greater. So their circadian photoreception is about 10 times greater than a 90-year-old, for example. So there's something in the anatomy of the eye that basically influences how they process light. And yet, and this is the very sad and concerning bit, which we will be talking about as well, yet with increasing schooling hours, so the older the children get, up to their teenage years, they spend less and less time outside and even more time in dim light conditions, which, as I said before, poses these consequences and challenges for them. Okay, and now I just want to quickly highlight the comic book that we developed, because we think that it's very important to talk about all these effects, not just the photic or non-image forming effects, but also just anything that really influences how anything that where daylight influences our life on Earth. And we wanted to start very early with children very early on, so they know about this. So this is a comic book for children about 6 to 10 years old. It talks about the importance of daylight or light in general. And please, it's free, so please scan this QR code, share it with anyone, with your children, read it to them, or friends, colleagues, whatever. You can download it. It's currently available in English, German, and French, but we will develop a few more languages and translate them. So with this, thank you. And now can move on to, I think, maybe one question.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anna. So we have time for an urgent question. So is there one? Yes, there is one from Paul Kenny. Hello, Paul. So the difference is the difference in photoreception between young and older people due to more than the gradual discoloration of the lens. What else is happening to cause this?
So so that's a good question. I'm not an expert on this. I think maybe I would even pass this on to our myopia expert, because I think here Owen could answer this question better than I could.
Maybe Owen, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, it's good question. Yeah, so we're not entirely sure where that difference in the perception of the different light colors comes from. As the retina develops, there's different levels of chemicals. So one of the things we're going to mention in a little while, as part of my talk, is dopamine. So as the retina develops and as myopia develops, we see different levels of dopamine in the retina. So that's a potential for how the retina reacts to the light, is maybe some of those different biochemicals and the makeup there. But I'm not 100% sure on that either. So I'd leave that open a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but at least we know that light sensitivity increases, but the reasons seem not that clear.
Yeah, and there's not too many studies on this as far as I understand. So definitely an open question.
Okay, thank you very much. So Anna, or maybe the next speaker, who is Rolf Jucker, Dr. Rolf Jucker. He's an international expert in outdoor learning. He's the CEO, if I remember correctly, from the Sylvia Foundation, Switzerland. And he is very much into outdoor learning. And he also is he edited a book about the topic, which includes a chapter on outdoor learning and children's eyesight. So I'm very curious to see what you are going to present us, Rolf. Please share your slides with us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, good evening from my side as well. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to show you 2 slides only. For us, it's a little bit like hitting the jackpot in the lottery, because there are 2 things that support and reinforce each other in an impactful way. The first thing is outdoor learning, and we know now by broad research which we've collected in that volume you can see there on the right-hand side. Outdoor learning is nourishing and supporting children's development of potential in a complex way. On the one hand, it supports academic learning. It makes memory more powerful. There are, if you want to learn more complex or have to solve more complex issues, then outdoor learning helps. It also helps with language competencies. So there's that academic side, but then there's the social competencies. We know from learning research that the trust, in other words, the social combination or the social interaction between teachers and learners, but also amongst learners, is a very crucial element for successful learning. We also know that self-competencies, for example, self-efficacy, is a very crucial element in learning success. In outdoor learning, there's much more possibility that you can actually live up to challenges, that you can experience, that you can solve complex real-world problems. So that increases your self-confidence, which is an important aspect of learning success. There is really a plethora of aspects of physical and mental health which are positively influenced by outdoor learning. It's virtually impossible not to move when you learn outdoors. You train gross and fine motor skills, you're in daylight, you can solve the CO2 problem you very often have in classrooms. There is a lot of indication that emotional problems and behavioral problems are better solved outdoors, particularly in boys. So there's a whole host of that. Then you have what we call real-world learning. There is evidence that if you deal with real-world problems, say in your village, and learn about them and try to solve them and talk to all the experts in the village and maybe even external experts, that you acquire a far more in-depth understanding of a problem than is usually the case when you learn it in a kind of abstract, hypothetical way indoors. Then are the 21st century skills. You might know them, the so-called 5 C's: communication, cooperation, critical thinking, creativity, and complexity thinking. There's a lot of evidence that coping with challenges, dealing with unexpectedness, and also a readiness to act is fostered during outdoor learning. And lastly, I would like to mention familiarity with and connection to nature. That's increasingly a problem. The nature deficit syndrome, which was diagnosed by Richard Louv quite a while ago, is steadily increasing. People are not used to being outdoors anymore, kids, and they find it even frightening and are uncomfortable outdoors. When you learn outdoors regularly, that familiarity and also the understanding that we are part of nature is increased. Now, you might ask, what does all this have to do with the topic of this webinar? And our take on this is that regular outdoor learning in compulsory schooling is probably the best and cheapest solution we know of against myopia. I've put 2 quotes from a recent article or news item in Nature, which posits outdoor learning as a good solution to the myopia problem. Of course, there are many architectural and also medical solutions to the problem, but it seems that the easiest and cheapest and also most holistic solution to the problem is 2 hours outdoor in daylight per day. And if you take this together with what I just said about the benefits of outdoor learning, you might see why we're so excited about this collaboration with the Daylight Academy and thinking about the impact of or the combination between outdoor learning and myopia prevention, for example, because when you have so many positive impacts on the development of the full potential of the kids when they're learning outdoors, and you have throughout, ideally, their entire school career, a 2-hour outdoor learning sequence per day in daylight, we think that's a truly win-win situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for presentation this role. So I think this is really an interesting topic and an interesting approach. So we have one question from Lucas Fonorelli, and he asks, so which obstacles do you experience most in your implementation?
That's a very good question indeed. And it's sometimes even a bit puzzling because when we talk to teachers, we've just done that in a big city in the canton of Zurich, and 86% of the teachers said they really want to do outdoor learning. They're very motivated to do it. And then they presented us with a long list of things why, or excuses why they can't do it. And so I think that the answer to the question is most of these problems or perceived problems are logistical in nature, and so forth. I might go into it a little bit more in the discussion around. But through the experience of implementation of outdoor learning worldwide, we have a whole list of solutions to most of these logistical or organizational problems. And once you kind of realize you can solve these problems, the kind of opposition to outdoor learning is not really substantial. We've not really encountered kind of opposition in the sense of, oh, this is an absolutely stupid idea, we're certainly not going to do it. It's rather we want to do it, but we're not entirely sure how we can do it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Rolf. Maybe we can go in more details later on during the discussion, as you said. Thank you very much for presenting this. So now we go to the last speaker, who is Owen Carin. He is a PhD student from the Technological University of Dublin and in Ireland. So he's currently working on child and activity and myopia, and he recently published an excellent article and on the RTE portal, Why Daylight Matters for Children's Eyesight. So we are looking very much forward to your presentation, Owen. Please share your slide with us.
Okay, thanks, Miriam, for the kind introduction. So, like Miriam said, my name is Owen Cairn, and I'm an optometrist and a researcher here in the Centre of Eye Research in Dublin. So my work is mainly on myopia trials. So we have trials across a number of different myopia interventions and looking at myopia progression and cognition, how that interacts as well. So that's kind of my day-to-day work. And then I'm also doing a PhD, as Miriam mentioned, which is looking at lifestyle factors and how they interact with children's refractive development, so how their eyes develop, and also their long-term vision. So the factors that we're kind of looking at are things like outdoors time, screen time, and physical activity. So I also have a master's in sports science. So I'm really interested in kind of seeing how a child's lifestyle can interact with their refractive error and their eyes, and how that changes over time, and maybe how we can help to improve that over time as well. So that's kind of where my background comes from. So why I've been invited on, I guess, and why this is important is myopia is increasing globally. So we've seen over the last few decades that the myopia rate has really grown across different countries and different cultures. So it's not just a problem in one area, and it's happening everywhere. And as myopia increases and we see more and more high myopia, that brings several different complications. So there's the short-term complications, and then there's longer-term serious complications, and it's becoming a public health challenge for us all as we're all living longer. And if we start having all these eye complications as well, then that's something as a society we're going to have to deal with down the line as well. The good news is that we have seen and we have evidence now that shows that the environment plays a part. So we can see that because it's changing so quickly over the last few years, it's not just genetics that's causing this increase. It's also our behavior and our environment. That means things like being inside more often, maybe more of a focus on education and urbanization, that can drive the increase. But that's also something that we can look at affecting, and we can cause a change ourselves if we kind of push back and really look at implementing daylight as part of our daily routine as well. And it's also, as Rolf mentioned, it's also free, it's readily available, and it's something very straightforward. So a lot of the trials that I work on are looking at interventions which cost quite a bit of money. So being able to go outside and maybe spend 2 hours a day outside, it's a much cheaper and more available option for some people as well. So it's something that we really need to look at. And so that's hopefully what this talk today and my contribution will be looking at, maybe understanding where myopia is coming from, and also the evidence that shows the benefit of daylight and how we can see how it actually has a tangible effect, and also then maybe have a look at some ideas of how we can start implementing the more daylight into children's lives. And that comes from all across the spectrum. So it's families, schools, local communities, and into governments and international collaborations like this one as well. So hopefully we can get some ideas maybe of ways we can start making daylight part of a child's routine again, and really try and fight back against this myopia epidemic. So that's everything I have, Miriam.
Okay, thank you very much, Owen, as well. So actually, I have if I am allowed to have a quick question to you, just in terms of comprehensions, can you just very briefly say what myopia is?
Yeah, sure, for sure. Yeah, sorry, I should have started with that.
Just
Yeah, so myopia or short-sightedness is what some people will know it as, and it manifests as issues in seeing in the distance. So generally speaking, we'll see kids who maybe can't see the blackboard is one of the first things, or the board in school. That's usually, when I'm working in an optician's, that's usually the first thing that the parent will bring the child. They can't see the board in school, or they can't see the TV. And what's happened is, on a basic enough level, myopia is where our eye is too long. So the eye has grown too long. So what happens is it generally starts in a younger age, and then as we grow, the eye gets longer and longer and longer. And so that's why we get more and more progressive myopia as well.
okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
No, all good. So I think there are two more questions, but I think we switch to the discussion and now, or there is even a third one. We switch to the discussion now, because then there will be more questions and more discussions possible. So can I please ask the speakers to switch on their camera and their microphones, so then we'll start with the discussion. And of course, I have prepared some questions for you that we can have and I think it would be nice to have a real interactive discussion. So please feel free if you want to answer it differently, or if somebody else wants to answer it, the questions from I'm asking to a person or not. So first I will start with Anna. And so you said something interesting about daylight and sleep, and also some sort of a later chronotype. So why? Because during the night, there is no daylight. So why is daylight important during the day? And what is the problem with daylight when it's too low for evening light exposure? So what is this kind of vicious circle, maybe? And maybe you can say a little bit more about that and the consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where do I start? So basically, I told you that we have this body clock, right? And it needs to be synchronized to this outside light dark cycle. And now we know from circadian studies that it depends on when you get the light. So if you get light in the morning, then your internal rhythm might be a bit advanced. Whereas if you get light later on, when it's actually already dark, or just very late in the day, your biological rhythm might delay a little bit. And this means within these 24 hours, you can shift around a little bit. And so basically, if you don't get the light when your body sort of wants it, you can confuse it, and then you have more shifts. So that's the one thing. And then something that I haven't quite mentioned during my introduction is that in teenagers, we see that this internal clock changes also. And that's the problem here, because they tend to, on average, as a population, become later. So they become a bit owlish, so later chronotypes during their development, during puberty. And then in the early 20s, this sort of slows down and goes back a little bit. So now we have this clash that if you don't get the right light, but you also have this a bit late or later chronotype, that you shift towards later hours in the evening, but you have to get up very early for schooling. And so this actually affects their sleep a lot as well. So basically, teenagers on average don't get the amount of sleep they're supposed to get, which is about 8 to 10 hours. And we often see in many studies worldwide that they get less than that. And now you can also imagine, if you spend the entire time in school and you don't go outside, that you don't get the light environment that's needed to push you a little bit or pull you a little bit earlier, right? So it actually adds on to this effect that you're later.
Okay, thank you very much. And do you think, is there a kind of an interaction between the two, like too less daylight and too much light in the evening? What is the interaction of this? I mean, just to add this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can, as I mentioned also, that especially during the pre and mid-pubertal age, children are even more sensitive to light in the evening. So I think there is an interaction that if you reduce this, but also increase light during the day, that you can help prevent all these negative consequences.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, this is where can we increase daylight? And that is something, of course, during school hours for children, I mean, if they are outdoors. So then, Rolf, what do you think? So what are the positive effects of outdoor teaching? And what is your experience from you, but also from others?
As I've tried to mention in my input, what I really find very, very interesting from the available research on the positive impact on outdoor learning is that we sometimes call it's like it's like increasing the potential that effective learning is actually taking place, because it is not the kind of silver bullet for a specific learning problem, say a specific math problem. It might be, but it's not only that. What is really interesting is that it interacts on a lot of different levels. It has a memory impact. There's wonderful studies showing that if you learn the exact same learning content sitting down or in movement, you can remember it a lot better when you do it in movement. That has evolutionary reasons and others. So it is academic learning, which is not always, but in very many cases improved. You have this other aspect, which we really see massively, is children learn well when they feel well. In other words, if there is a social context where they have trust, where they feel positively valued by the teacher and by the other kids, the potential that they're really learning well is massively increased. So we know that outdoor learning really helps doing that. I give you one example. Sometimes people say, well, outdoor learning is a problem because you lose time. For example, on your walk to, say, the forest or a park or wherever, whatever green space you might be using as a learning space. That is, given that we have 11 years of compulsory schooling, maybe slightly the wrong perspective. Because when you talk to teachers who do outdoor learning since a very long time, they say these times, these journeys, but also the time in the nature space afterwards, really allows us much better than in the classroom to connect to kids, to really listen to where they are at the moment. They come to us and tell us stories. We can far better interpret where they stand in their development, what they might need to support them. One teacher who is doing outdoor learning since quite a long time has recently said to me, I feel sorry for the kids and for myself for all the time when I only taught indoors, because since I teach outdoors, I really have the feeling that I know my kids in a kind of holistic sense rather than just in a more limited sense, which is possible in the classroom. So I think what is interesting for us is it's really a tool when you think from the learning of the kids and not from the curriculum or from the kind of, okay, I want to teach this, that, or the other, but really from the potential of the kids. What can we do that kids by the end of compulsory schooling are really citizens who can cope well and competently in a complex world? Then outdoor learning is just one important tool for a school of the future. I'm pretty sure by now, looking at research.
Thank you very much. So I have just a follow-up questions to that as well, because you said very clearly, okay, there is this huge difference and makes a difference to many things. So what do you have an idea what it, I mean, of course it's outside, but what is it? Is it tangible, or what do you think it is?
Well, that's of course a very good question, because in education, looking at impact in a evidence-based way is always very complicated indeed, because it's a social interaction and you have many different factors that actually influence, say, a learning outcome. So to a certain degree, it is a difficult question to answer. But on the other hand, I think that the research really points in the direction that because outdoor learning is it is using time differently, it is using space differently, it is using daylight, it is using it is far more intensively using the different senses. It seems that it might in many ways be an evolutionary, more adapted way of learning. And if you can look at the entire evolutionary history of mankind, then most of learning has always taken place outside. The kind of this grammar of schooling, as we call it, that you learn inside, that you have a 45-minute timetable, that you sit still, that you're not allowed to move, and so forth and so forth. This entire grammar of schooling is not very old. It came up with the Industrial Revolution, and it had its positive impact. You know, it's not just, we don't want to criticize it. We always say inside and outside combined is the solution. It's not the one or the other. But I think with the kind of overemphasis of inside learning, we've forgotten the contribution that outside learning can actually make to the contribution of a successful development of kids in a more holistic way.
Okay, thank you very much, Rolf, for clarification of this point. So my next question goes to Owen, of course, and relating the natural state, evolutionary state. So what is known is the role, is current state and the causes and the role of daylight for in myopia research, but also in myopia interventions, or daylight interventions for myopia.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose it's multifactorial why myopia is growing. So what we're seeing at the moment, there's projections that 50% of the world are going to be myopic by 2050. So we're seeing changes in the last few decades that go beyond just genetics. So there's something has changed in recent times, which is causing this boom in myopia. So in certain countries, particularly in East and Southeast Asia, there's up to 80-90% already of people leaving school who are myopic, and 20% of those are highly myopic. So there certainly seems to be something in the environment or within our lifestyles which has changed, which has driven this. And there was a study in 2008, it was kind of the landmark study in this area by Catherine Rose. And what she found was, irrespective of parental myopia and irrespective of near work, outdoor time was protective against myopia. And since that was the first study that really, pardon the pun, shone a light on outdoor time as a really protective influence on myopia. And since then, there's been loads and loads of work in this area, which has confirmed that and has looked at different ways and different interventions to try and to understand it better. And it's still an area that we don't fully understand. So we think that it's the bright light levels outdoors, which are significantly brighter than your indoor light levels, cause a release of dopamine, which then protects the eye from axial elongation. So it stops the eye from growing longer. So that's, like I mentioned earlier, as we grow, our eye grows longer, and that's where myopia progresses and progresses. Where this becomes an issue is as your eye grows and grows and grows, it's like a balloon. So the more your eye grows and grows, it stretches and stretches and stretches, and that can cause complications as we get older, particularly, and we can have some serious things like retinal detachments and macular degeneration and stuff. So that's why it's an issue. And what we've seen then in kind of recent times with different studies and different trials is introducing outdoor time into children's lives has a protective effect and stops myopia coming in. So there was one study in China which introduced 40 minutes of outdoor time every day to the children's lives, and that reduced the incidence of myopia. So the amount of myopia cases reduced from 40% to 30% within that group over a 3-year period. And then there was another trial in Taiwan which had similar findings just by taking their breaks outside. So nothing particularly fancy, no great need for any equipment, just moving the brakes outside, and that also lowered the amount of new cases of myopia. So this is quite simple stuff, but the studies have really found consistent results as well. So we can say fairly confidently that daylight has a positive effect on myopia, and it's stopping those new cases of myopia.
Okay, thank you so much. That's was a very great answer also to and clarified the issue. Just one short question. So what do you, I mean, this is not known as far as I know, but what do you think, why are most of the cases or the majority of cases in Asia?
Yeah, good question. Again, kind of several different factors. There's a bit of genetic predisposition, obviously, but also in Asia, it tends to be in the more urbanized areas. So the really built up cities, less green spaces, less outdoor time. And also it's in the cultures that tend to have the the real focus on education. So starting school earlier and a really strong focus on studying and academic achievement. And the more you focus on that kind of stuff, it takes away from your outdoor time. So it means that you're maybe not able to go outside as much. So it seems to be that, because even within China and within countries in Asia, we've seen the difference between the urban and rural areas can be quite stark as well. So it definitely seems to be an urban issue and also an educational culture issue as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Owen. So that brings me again back to Anna, of course. So you published this wonderful book now, and of course you try to attract most children as well. But how do you do that, and how do you think could attention be increased, and what is needed to really make the topic more known and bring it into the mind of people?
Yeah, of course, that's a challenge, right? So we came up with some ideas. Of course, one of the things that we do is taking part here in the Daylight Academy. Also, the Daylight Academy, I have to mention, or I want to mention and thank them, because they have contributed a lot of funding for the book. And so all the events during this awareness week, we try to promote the book. Also at the Berlin Science Week this week actually as well. And then just whenever I go to conferences or other outreach activity, when I do other outreach activities, I show it. But this often reaches only the parents or maybe researchers who don't have children. And so I'm also I'm also very thankful for collaborations like this one here, where we reach out to other disciplines where people don't know so much about the non-image forming effects, for example, because often we associate light with something else, like what it does, how we can use it for electricity, for example. That's also part of the book. So I just want to mention, it's not just about the non-image forming effects of light. It's anything that daylight or the sun helps us do on Earth. And then I have some contacts into schools where I distribute the book as well, and hope that parents will read it with their children or show it to them, and then the older children can read it themselves. And I also want to mention that actually we went out to some schools. So when we developed the book, we had a prototype basically, and then we showed it to children. I did it here in a primary school in Germany, and Colleen who did it in France with the school there. And we went there and asked the children, well, do you understand what we mean? Do you have any difficulties? Can you explain to us the concepts that we present? Choose a title. They loved that. They really wanted to choose a title for the book. And yeah, this is also a way of how we can go into the systems and try to connect to children. But yeah, since it's, I'm not a teacher, it's always a bit of an issue. So anyone who is in the audience, and even if you don't have children, please do forward this to other interested colleagues, friends, relatives.
Thank you very much, Anna. Just for clarification, can you just briefly, I know most people will know, but what non-visual effects are, just briefly, because you mentioned that, I think.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the introduction as well. So basically, as I said, with these two pathways, so we use light, of course, for vision, that we see something, that's the image forming pathway in your brain, but we also use it for these circadian effects, which is unconscious, right? We are not aware of that this is happening. So yeah, that the light is used for your so your synchronization, let's say, from the body clock to the outside world.
Thank you very much. Just to, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's clear. Okay, and so then of course, we have the book, but we also for outdoor learning. So Rolf, what do you think could be the boundaries or the barriers for outdoor learning for teachers and for children and for parents as well and for stakeholders? What can you imagine?
Yes, we have quite an extensive experience with these boundaries and challenges and obstacles. Because as I said before, there's quite a lot of very good understanding why outdoor learning is almost obviously a positive thing, but at the same time, it is clear. I kind of mentioned that the traditional grammar of schooling, outdoor learning is different. Outdoor learning is a bit of a challenge because it forces individual teachers, but also headmasters, school teams, and parents to kind of imagine learning differently. Because you have to reorganize the school timetable differently to make it possible that kids can go outside for an entire morning or maybe even a day. You usually need somebody to accompany a class. That wasn't a problem 30 years ago, but today it is. So it has organizational issues there. You need material. Sometimes you need to educate the parents that they dress the kids appropriately, because, as the old saying goes, there's no bad weather but bad clothing. So you need good clothing. There's loads of really cool tricks to kind of deal with these issues. But they're there and they need to be addressed. So what we've realized is, and that's a rather interesting issue in my view, is when you start to introduce outdoor learning, first it is very important not to set the bar too high, because you need to get people to experience it. And once they go outside themselves and they take their kids outside, they very quickly see the positive effects. And that leads to a dynamic when they try it more and when they do it longer and more often and more regularly and so forth. But it's also important to get school support. We've realized that very often there are enthusiastic teachers, but then they're in a team or there's a school headmaster who is not particularly fond of it because he has never heard of it. He hasn't read our book, obviously, and they're slightly reluctant because it needs changes. So you need to support them. You need to coach them and kind of encourage them along the way. But the interesting bit is when they keep at it, they realize outdoor learning is a really, really cool tool to address a lot of other issues they're facing in school, be it inclusion, be it discipline. You know, very often there are a bunch of kids who find it very, very difficult to concentrate inside and sit still. If you take those kids outside, most teachers say, I don't recognize them, what's happened to them? They're suddenly not disruptive anymore. Sometimes they even turn into social leaders because they're familiar with the outer world and so forth. So you can talk about it helps school teams to reflect again on their, okay, what do we really want to achieve? What is our learning goals? Where do we want to go with our kids? And then that very often influences then the teaching indoors as well. So research shows that if you want to introduce new concepts like outdoor learning or sustainability or there are other things into schools, you need to have a long, how do you say it, a long breath? No, it's not happening with the turning of a switch. It happens over a couple of years. You need to ingrain it into school culture. You have to support people to do it. But when you do that, we see a tremendous effect even on the teachers. You know, we kind of sell it because it's so good for the learning of the kids and their health. For example, in all the aspects that Erwin mentioned. But the teachers themselves report back to us that they're healthier, that they feel more resilient, that their teaching becomes more creative, that their interaction with the kids has a lot more depth, that they know their kids a lot better and therefore can support them better. So yeah, as with most things, you need to give them a bit of time to mature and to grow.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, I have a follow-up, but I will first go to Owen as well. So Owen, in terms of boundaries, what do you think needs to be done that these numbers are not doubled by 2050?
Yeah, good question. And it ties in a little bit with some of the work we've done with my PhD. So we had a survey which we asked parents, teachers and coaches and optometrists, loads of different questions about lifestyle and myopia and some of the barriers as well, which Ralph mentioned. We got a lot of the same sort of stuff in the barriers. But what we saw, which was pretty concerning, but it was interesting, was more than half of the parents that we surveyed had never heard of the link between outdoor time and myopia. So there's a big knowledge gap there that we need to fill. And another thing which I found very interesting was 90% of optometrists that we surveyed said that they routinely mention outdoor time as part of their eye test. And 10% of parents said they'd ever been told that during an eye test. So the message is being given, but it's not necessarily being received. So in kind of a short term, we need to get the message out there better. From a family's point of view, we need to just find maybe ways of incorporating outdoor time into our daily lives. So it doesn't need to be 2 hours in one big block. It can be 10, 15 minutes on the way to school in the morning, maybe walking rather than getting the car, making a habit of we go to the park every Friday evening after school, things like that. From school's point of view, it's maybe incorporating outdoor breaks. Like I said, that study in Taiwan, they showed that just by moving the breaks outside, that can have a protective effect. And then also sort of in terms of government and local and national government, it's just getting that infrastructure and incorporating safe outdoor spaces for kids so that they can walk to school, or we can do active transport to school, or they can go outside and play in a safe space, in nice green spaces. I know in Ireland, the Football Association here in Ireland, they were looking at maybe changing the calendar a little bit so that they would play football maybe during the summer a little bit more than the winter, and to try and increase participation. So even just using ideas like that, just to use a bit of innovation and finding ways to maybe get more people outside. And then I suppose lastly is kind of internationally is just looking at what's working in other countries, collaborations like this, talking to experts in other fields, Like we've seen in some countries in Asia. So I know I pitched sort of a sad story there in Asia where it's 80-90% in some countries, but we've also seen in countries like Taiwan and Singapore, they've implemented programs which have reversed those trends. So they've incorporated outdoors time into the lives of the children, and they've started to push back against myopia. So we can learn from other countries what works in Taiwan, what works in Singapore. It may not work exactly like that in Ireland, but we can take some of the learnings from what they've done and implement it here as well. So like I said earlier, it's sort of a whole team effort. It's not just up to families. It's not just up to parents to fix this. It's not just up to us as researchers and optometrists and sort of experts. It's up to everybody all across the spectrum to get involved with this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I will open to all of you the last question, and then before we go to the questions from the audience. So what needs to be done, short, middle, long term? And Owen, you already mentioned a lot of activities which would be necessary to increase awareness, to increase access to daylight, to increase consequences of a lack of daylight. So what do you think? What are your ideas? Needs to be done?
Yeah, well, definitely for me, it's that knowledge gap is the first thing that really needs to be figured out initially. So we need to find ways to get that message across, but also get it across in a way that it's understood and it's implemented, and like I said, if it seems like optometrists are given the message but it's not landing, so why is it not landing? That's the next question for me anyway. And if we can start to make it an accepted thing that outdoor time has all these positive benefits, then we can start to implement your more longer term strategies, like looking at school curriculums, looking at your infrastructure and your green spaces and your local sort of areas for kids as well. So that for me, it's the knowledge is the initial part, and then we can build the medium and the long term after that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what needs to be done maybe in terms of recommendations? I mean, Anna, you have had you formulated some recommendations, I think, for the Belgian Council, National Council, something like that. So in terms of light exposure, what do you think could be in terms of recommendations? Where should it be addressed? What should be the format? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this was basically requested from the German-speaking part of the Belgian government, and they wanted to understand how they could change their schooling system to accommodate chronobiological effects, basically. And so, yeah, so light was one part, but it was also the timing of what to teach at certain times of the day, how to change the maybe school starting hours in the morning to, as I said earlier, to help children get more sleep. But of course, light is always an issue there as well. So we had these different pillars where we said, okay, it's changing something about the school starting times, changing something about learning times. So maybe don't start with maths in the morning, but start with something a bit more not as cognitive heavy. But for example, here you can do that outside, right? Because as we learned, doing outdoor learning maybe in the morning, where you get this very important morning light, might help you reset your system a little bit so you become earlier. And so that's one thing, but you can also, as I mentioned in the chat actually to someone, some countries, and Owen said that as well, some countries have implemented ideas like in Norway, they have mandatory outdoor breaks, so children have to go outside during these times. But you can also change architectural settings, but of course that's much more long-term. That requires investment, that requires a lot of effort from schools, and I think that's much less realistic than really trying to change the setting in the sense that children just go outside and do more there. But I think what I learned from this this paper that we wrote, this recommendations that we wrote there, was that if you have someone who's open to this, it makes it much easier, right? And so I think it really starts with what Owen said. We need to get this message across somehow. If people are not aware of it, they're not interested in changing something. And then there are still a lot of barriers on how we could implement it. But that's another topic, and I think there are a lot of solutions to this, but it starts with the willingness and trying to be informed about it. And so, I think somehow we need to fill this gap of finding partners in education and also in policy settings, that they are willing to listen, and also we need to be more active and make basically advocating for the importance of light here, and that to view it in a holistic way, right? It's about myopia, it's about sleep, it's about circadian rhythms, it's about health overall, and it's not just helping in one aspect, and I think that might be a selling point.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Rolf, do you want to add something to it?
Yeah, maybe just a couple of words, very much endorsing what Owen and Anna have said. It's almost mirroring a little bit what I said about the effects of outdoor learning on the quality of learning. This holistic approach to education, and what Anna just said is very much a holistic approach to health for kids and young people. And I think it's very, very important to build those, to combine those fields and build coalitions, because I can really see that there is a win-win-win situation. You have the health aspect, supported in a holistic way. You have the educational aspect, which is a very important aspect, with a view to how can we cope with the challenges of the future. And what Owen also mentioned, you have an economic aspect, and I think we should also play this card. I've done a very on the back of an envelope calculation on the basis of figures from Singapore, what the health costs for this increase, which Owen mentioned, to 2050, up to 50% of the population, might mean in terms of health costs in Switzerland. And that's a double figure. That's in the double figure billion Swiss francs region, and that is just health costs. That is not lost productivity, which comes on top of it. So if we start to work together, the education field and you health experts and maybe educational economic experts and policymakers, then we might really manage to fill those gaps that you both have indicated, because we can look at the issue from different angles, and we can also bring into the fold different constituencies which can help support the changes that will be needed on many levels.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. That was really a very interesting discussion we had. So I would like to open then the space also for our audience. So we have a lot of questions, and as far as I can see, many are to myopia. So that is, but of course, so I will pick some questions, and maybe not, I will not get to all of you, so please, sorry about that already now, but please feel free to answer it, Anna, Rolf, and Owen. So I will start with the first question from Anna Franklin. So Owen, how do you disentangle the effect of having greater experience looking at long distance when being outdoor from the effect of daylight? Both help with myopia, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's a good question, Anna. So that study that I mentioned from Catherine Rose from Australia, so that was the first one that really showed that outdoor activity separate from that near work. So regardless of the amount of near work that the kids were getting, they were still having the outdoor protective effect. So where looking in the distance comes from, that's to do with the focusing ability of the eye and the accommodation. So that does have a role in myopia. The results of studies tend to be a bit more mixed than the results from outdoor time. So it seems like light is probably a little bit ahead of that looking in the far distance, but it does have a role. And also we can kind of see with animal studies as well. So there's a lot of work has been done with animals with light, which show similar results to what we get in human studies. So the results seems to translate. So it does seem to be the light that's driving a lot of this protection, but there is definitely a place for getting away from the near work, taking breaks from your, particularly your long-term near work. So if you have a kid who's sitting there reading for hours and hours and hours a day, they are missing out on their outdoor time, but also there's that increased accommodative load as well, which can drive the myopia. So I wouldn't say I would disentangle them completely. They both have roles in myopia, but I think probably the evidence suggests that light is more of a factor than the kind of near work and the distance looking outside. But it all kind of works together. There's also spatial frequency is higher outside, so that's kind of the uniformity of things we look at. So I'm probably going off in a mad tangent here, but when you're outside, the world is less uniform than when you're inside. So if I'm in a room here, all the lines are nice and straight. I'm surrounded by a desk that's nice and straight. When I go outside, I'm surrounded by trees, bushes, everything's a little bit, there's a higher spatial frequency, and that has been shown to maybe have a role in myopia as well. So there's lots of different factors. It's not just the case necessarily that light is the only thing that when we go outside, but it all contributes.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question is again from Paul Kenny. So outdoor learning. It has been shown that the natural outdoor environment is of particular importance to the young neurodivergent community. Are you aware of any school-based initiatives that have sought to support their neurodivergent students through greater outdoor activity, either through scheduled activity or maybe even through school design?
A very good question. I'm not aware of any specific programs, but I think you're onto something very important. What we do realize is, particularly in Switzerland, but I reckon that's pretty similar in other, at least European countries. We have increasingly diverse classes. On regarding all different issues, and outdoor space, due to some of the factors Owen just mentioned, but also the kind of variety of space, the variety of possible interactions, the different sound qualities and so forth seem to have a supporting effect or make it easier for people who find, or kids who find the interaction in the usually very normed learning environments indoors very challenging for various reasons. So I can very much see that this approach could be an answer to your question, but I'm not aware of any specific programs at the very moment.
Okay, and another question is from Lilian Lettieri. Sunglasses, sunscreen, massive skin covering, all under the narrative that UV and short wavelength is harmful. Change the spectrum of natural light on the skin and eyes are exposed to with notably decreased production of vitamin D. Given IPRGCs are incredibly sensitive to huge portions of the spectrum, don't we need to ensure eyes and skin get exposed to the full spectrum throughout the day to entrain with the ongoing circadian cues? So it's about, do we need full light to really get the full benefit?
Yeah, so I can take the sunglasses part anyway, because when I did my article for RT, the first thing one of my friends texted me and said was, "Does this mean my sunglasses can go in the bin?" So in terms of the light that's getting to the eyes, sunglasses, they don't, the light outside is so bright that sunglasses only block a portion of that. So we still get the benefit even wearing sunglasses, unless they're extremely dark and unless they're blocking all the light getting into the eyes. So sunglasses still have a huge benefit because it means kids can spend more time outdoors as well. It's more comfortable for kids outdoors. So certainly from the myopia point of view, keep the sunglasses on.
Yeah, there is also the study from Naja Raymond. I know he did the study with sun hats and sunglasses in Singapore, and he showed also that for the non-visual effects, the benefit is still there. Anna, do you want to answer as well?
I just wanted to add that I think there's this confusion these days that you can buy sunglasses that have blue filters blue filters basically, so blue light filtering glasses. And I think this is not necessarily what we want. I think from a circadian point of view, you do want to have these blue light portions of the light during the day, right? Because they are activating. I think it's just that there's this confusion between the part that damages your eyes. So when for example, when you directly look into the sun, of course, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And as Owen said, you still get enough light when you wear certain glasses, except the very dark ones.
Okay, good, thank you. So another question is, so there is actually, so it was mentioned before about architectural changes, and of course we did not go into much detail. So Jens Christoffersen, he writes that Velux did a Healthy Home Barometer 2019 with focus on indoor environment at home and at school with focus on children. And there are multiple learnings about the better indoor environment, including light. And so he gives the link. Actually, it was less a question than just to give a link. Maybe you can see the link in the chat. So then the question is, which I think is interesting, 2 hours per day outside has been shown to reduce myopia risk by about 50%. This is from Lisa Heschong. She's also from the Daylight Academy. So how much more time outside do kids need to get to 90% reduction in myopia risk? So this is calculation.
Yeah, good
Maybe
question.
I can add here just as a follow-up question to this. And do we need 2 hours in one block, or can you split it up into multiple times?
Yeah, you can split it up, and there's even a study last year in Shanghai which found kind of 15-minute blocks over 2,000 lux had a protective effect. So we can certainly split it up. In terms of getting to that 90%, so there seems to be a plateau effect. So the 2 hours is kind of based around a couple of studies in the early 2010s, which showed a 2% increase in a reduction in risk per hour per week, up to about 20 hours. So that's about 3 hours a day, seems to be where we hit the maximum benefit. Beyond that, we want the level of benefit wasn't the same. So we were getting diminishing gains from about 20 hours onwards, but we were getting up to maybe 80, 90% around those 3 to 4 hours maybe. So a bit more time outdoors is no harm, but I don't know if we'll get to 100%.
Okay. So, and then related to that, again, myopia question. Are there any studies linking LED sources causing myopia? Also maybe flickering, is that a problem?
Mixed as well, so not hugely conclusive. Certainly seems to be there's less brightness from the LED lights and less of the broad wavelength that we get outdoors. So there's definitely not the same benefit from having these bright LEDs inside. They're not doing the same thing as being outside. So, but no, it's pretty inconclusive about the cause, whether it causes myopia or not really. We need more work on that.
Okay. And so in terms, there was an interesting question on, I just need to find it, about if time outdoors in daylight is good, how helpful is time indoors in a well daylight lit space?
So it doesn't have the same benefit. So outdoors is, even on a dark sort of rainy day, which we get in Ireland, you're talking about 10, 50 times as much brightness as inside, even in your brightest room. So even in a bright room, you're not getting the same benefit as being outdoors. You're also potentially missing some of those, the wavelengths of light. So there was an interesting talk yesterday about the wavelength of light coming off the green spaces outside as well. So it's not the same benefit really being inside as getting out into the nice bright daylight.
Okay, and then so another question: does the rules 2020 rule for eyes helps to prevent myopia?
Yeah, for sure. So it's linked to that prolonged near work. So like I was saying earlier, one of the factors for myopia is that kind of more prolonged near work. So the 20-20-20 rule is just about taking regular breaks, looking away from your book, and just giving the eyes a bit of a break to refocus and to reset the accommodative function. So it certainly does. Yeah, no, definitely important to get regular breaks and take the break outside if you can.
And then there is, again, there's really many questions on myopia. One from Luca Zaniboni: can exposure to laser provide benefits against myopia worsening when it has already been developed and diagnosed, also during teenage and adulthood?
Sorry. Yeah, so there's definitely evidence that daylight can slow the progression once it's already started, but the evidence is less, there's less of a protective effect compared to before it starts. So it's important that we get this daylight to the younger kids to stop the myopia starting. But definitely the evidence from studies that we found shows that it can slow around about a quarter of a diopter. So myopia goes in, I'm sure everyone knows kind of in numbers, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So about a quarter of a step is generally what the studies have shown to slow down, which doesn't sound loads, but it all adds up. It also can help with other interventions as well. So one study we did here in TU Dublin, it was using atropine, which is one of the medications for myopia. And what we found was during lockdown in COVID, the protective effect of the atropine seemed to be less when kids were confined indoors during the worst of the lockdown. So it also seems to maybe have a positive effect on the efficacy of treatment as well. So certainly it all adds up, and it's all positive getting outdoors, even once myopia has started, but maybe less so than before it starts.
Okay, thank you very much. That's actually the end of the webinar. So I'm very, very pleased to thank the speakers for their very, very valuable contribution and discussion and answering the questions from the audience. I also would like to thank the audience for their questions, for contributions to and exchange with the speakers. And of course, I want to thank also the Daylight Academy for the organization and kind of interaction with the audience and organizing all these little things, which I know takes a lot of work. And the Daylight Awareness Week continues. So you can see there is a drawing challenge for kids, which is The Sun in My World, where we welcome drawings from children aged 6 to 10, showing how they experience the sun. The deadline is the 5th of December. I'm sure there is a prize. And please also, you can scan the QR code. And the next webinar is a research for the Egyptian Museum in Turin, daylight assessment for the new exhibit layout. So this is on Thursday, November 6th, from 11 to 12 CET. Sign up now. So with this, I thank you all and wish you a very nice evening. Unfortunately, here it's dark, but tomorrow it's daylight again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
and thanks
Thanks
to the team as well.
Thank you.